Good evening, everybody. How's the sound? All right. We're going to leave the doors open just because there's still some people coming in, but we'll get going since it's a little past 7. The rooms acknowledges the province of Newfoundland and Labrador as the ancestral homelands of many diverse populations of Indigenous peoples who've contributed to 9,000 years of history, including the Beothuk on the island of Newfoundland. Today, this province is home to diverse populations of Indigenous and other people. We would also like to acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of the Mi'kmaq, Innu, and Inuit. My throat, of course, gave out right before we came on stage. We commit ourselves to working in a spirit of truth and reconciliation to make a better future for all. So thank you very much for joining us tonight for the inaugural dialogue and debate with Memorial University at the Rooms. This evening we have Dr. Jennifer Dyer and Dr. Mike Wahl, and this event is presented in collaboration with Memorial University's Department of Public Engagement. My name is Kate Wolforth, and I'm the Director of the Art Gallery, Museums, and Visitor Experience Department here at the Rooms. Some housekeeping. If you need any water, it's out in the front. Please put your phones on silent during the presentation. The emergency exit is right out here, and the lovely Sarah will direct you if anything happens. The washrooms, there is an all-gender washroom on level 1, and also there are washrooms just past the galleries this way. There'll be a question and answer at the end, and we'll ask for 1 question per person. And we are recording this evening's discussion. The Rooms promotes values of inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. We aim to provide a supportive and welcoming environment to people of all ages, genders, backgrounds, abilities, sexual orientations, religions, and nationalities. Some subjects in tonight's program may be challenging. We encourage a healthy discourse during the program, but discriminatory language of any kind will not be tolerated. Feedback about the program is welcome. You can speak to me or any of our staff directly after the program concludes. And now I'm going to pass things over before my throat gives out again to Lisa Brown, who is the Vice President of Administration, Finance, and Advancement at Memorial University. And we're so pleased to have Lisa here. Lisa is a former board member of the Rooms and a former board member of the National Gallery of Canada as well. And we're so pleased to have her here to introduce our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate. I'm really delighted to be at the Rooms. It's always a pleasure to work with Kate and all of the staff here. And as Kate has mentioned, I have very much an affinity for the arts, and so delighted to be here to kind of kick off this enhanced partnership between Memorial University and the Rooms. Art is such an important part of our world, and it can challenge us, it can challenge our thinking to be innovative, and all the things that a university can do as well. So I think it's a great partnership. Special thanks to my colleagues, Andrea Warman and Janet Herron, for helping us out with this. As I was walking here today, I was thinking about our 2 speakers, and I have met both of them previously. And 3 words came to mind to describe them and my encounters that I have had with them. And they are passionate, curious, and inspiring. And those 3 words were coming around in my head as I was walking here. And then when I went up to the exhibit, and I thought, gosh, the words are so appropriate for the exhibit as well. So the choice of these 2 speakers debating, dialoguing about this exhibit is just so appropriate. So thank you for being here. Dr. Jennifer Dyer is an interdisciplinary thinker who has taught in humanities, philosophy, communication studies, and the interdisciplinary PhD program. She is currently head of the Department of Gender Studies at Memorial. Jennifer conducts research in a variety of fields, including aesthetics and art theory, feminist media studies, queer and trans advocacy, queer methodologies, and gender in entrepreneurial studies. Her most recent research is a book, about gender diversity in the classical world, a feminist media analysis of trans advocacy in Canada, and an article on the eco-aesthetics of light in Newfoundland-based figurative painting. Dr. Mike Wahl is a professor of medicine in the Division of Biomedical Sciences at Memorial, has always had a passion for health education. His 25-year career spans academia, media, and entrepreneurship on a global scale. He's an explorer. He's traveled over 50 countries, a speaker, including TED Talks, and a documentary filmmaker for the very popular series Health Explored, which shares unique insights into health practices worldwide. We're also really fortunate at Memorial that he's sharing some of those learnings and thoughts with our alumni group. If you haven't seen those, please do sign up for them. Mike's work emphasizes a commitment to advancing health and wellness understanding, thereby inspiring individuals to contemplate what health means to them. I think we're in for a great evening. Please welcome you to the stage. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Good to see you.
Great to see you again.
All right, let's go.
Oh, really good.
So we were fortunate to be able to come and see the exhibit when it was being constructed and actually spend some time with Kim Morgan, the artist.
Yeah.
I recently interviewed her as well for our radio program. So we've had a bit of an insight and some time to think about these. And so, yeah, so I guess today we're going to share our...
We're gonna chat about the art.
Yeah. So what's our first one we're going to start with? Because I think that it starts off with what everybody else sees when they first walk in.
This?
And the galaxy wall. Yeah, not this one. I don't think this is the one. Let's see.
We can
Let's
change
go to the next one. Yeah.
Look at that.
There it is.
This one, right. I'm gonna move myself around. Is that all right?
Has everybody
right there?
here been upstairs yet to see this yet? Anybody seen this yet?
You can see it after.
Yeah.
Because it's open until 9, right? I'm looking at Kate. Kate knows all. That's all good. So it's open till 9. So after this, go up and see the show. But so Blood Galaxy is the first thing that you're going to see when you come into the show. And did you want to do it?
I want to pick your brain first because I'm going to lead off with your experience in this one. But I mean, it is the first thing you see when you come in. And when we were first coming in, there was ladders up and they were literally putting this piece in. So what was your first perspective?
Well, something that I love about this one is, first of all, I have zero background in medical anything. And yeah, everybody else in my family does, so I'm going to do something totally different. So I didn't really know what these were. But what I thought, well, then Kim said, right, that this is cells, right? So blood cells or various things. You're going to talk about that because I can't talk about that. But it's parts of the body that are tiny, tiny, tiny. And what I love about that is that we have this switch in scale, right? So now we are the tiny thing standing in front of this massive cosmos, and that's what I've been calling it. Actually, I forgot it was called Blood Galaxy, so I've been calling it cosmos in my head. So now we are the micro elements of these macro elements. What I like about that, right, is that when I'm thinking about blood, and this is just something that I thought about throughout the whole show, is that when I'm thinking about something like blood in this way, it's so political, right? Oh, yeah. So this tiny stuff that I am not in control of that goes through my body and carries all sorts of things, right, is suddenly huge, right? And so like this combination of meaning and matter, right, that they're not separated, they're brought together in this beautiful way. I don't know, I love it. The flipping a scale just makes it for me and brings out all those meanings, right? That all the politics of blood, right? Like illnesses and race and gender and sexuality and all this kind of stuff is now like, figure it out. And you can't.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, okay, so I'm supposed to come in with this medical lens, right? And so saying, I walk into this and I see this wall of cells and I'm like, well, that's cool. That's definitely from the body, I think. And so what's interesting about it, what I found was amazing about it was that there's very few people that could look at that and be able to say that's a certain type of cell.
Okay. And
then that's the right scale. The scale of the cells are all off.
Right, I didn't know that.
They're not all the same person either. Yeah. That's the other thing. So like a universe, so like think about when we look up at the sky, we see these stars up there and they're so tiny, but really in the real world, they're so massive. And then we walk in there, like you said, with the magic school bus, right? Remember that old show as a kid? You go in and explore the body and you see everything be big. Well, that's exactly what this is like. Now you're the micro, it's the macro, but the scale's all off. The cells are all off. That's not how they would exist in the body. There's different people in there, and there's no way to tell the difference. So if you talk about those labels that we give things, and I think that's a big theme that Kim Morgan, the professor who designed this, who's a professor of art, as well as an interdisciplinary scientist, really wanted to trick people, because no matter how good you are, when you go in there, you can't tell the difference between who is what and what is what. And so I think that's really interesting, because I walked in there supposedly being this medical person and not having a clue what I was looking at, but I thought it was beautiful at the same time. And as she explained, I was like nodding. I've heard that word before. And the other thing about it is it's black and white. And so what she does is she uses an electron microscope that magnifies things 8,000 to 25,000 times. And so this is blood. And so when we think about blood, blood can be repulsive to people. It can be something that signifies pain and trauma and can create a real stressful situation in people. But when you start to look at it at this depth, you realize it's just open space, and there's just all these little things that are making it up. And that's one of the things that their exhibits draw out. They all have these different components that make us up.
Yeah.
I was really
I'm going to riff off that now. Yeah. Because what I like about that is thinking about the space. And I actually fully thought this out, but the space for me, right? So visually, because you're so small standing in front of this giant wall, right? You have to move around it, right? You have to like sort of create an itinerary between things and maybe go back again, right? But what you're doing is you're making the relations happen, right? You're relating all these different things together that are of different sizes, from different people with different, whatever the meanings might be, and right? So you're making, I don't know, you're making the meaning happen out of all this, right? You're making those connections between these different people and whatever, right? Or parts of bits of the body.
Well, I also think that on the health literacy side of things, for anybody coming in to see this, artwork like this can be such a powerful motivator for change, for people to start taking an interest in their body. Because for the first time, they look at it and say, that's inside of me. That's what's going on inside of me. And they don't think about it at that scale. And so it can be fascinating for people. And for once, they can say, wow, this is an incredible machine. I want to learn more about how it is. And I think art allows people to have that access point, that a textbook, that a lecture, that things like that, or things that people have to apply to be part of, that only certain people can hear this information. Art allows people to get intrigued about it, and that could be a start of somebody's health journey.
Like there's no stakes game getting intrigued. It's like playful in a sense. Right? So should we move on?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. I now completely forget everything.
This is
so this is yours.
This is one of my favorites.
This is the one that you really like. I mean, I'd like it, but I know you got a whole lot more to say about this than I do.
I love this. So can anybody guess what this, does it say what it is? Oh, it does. Okay, yeah. So it's a skin flake. So if you can't guess, then, you know, all separate.
Then you can read. Can everybody read?
But what I love about this is relic. And relic is a artifact, you know, belonging to an important person. It could be a religious person. It could be some sort of person of status, right? And so essentially what we have here with this is this skin flake in this sacred box. So a pine box can be like a coffin, signify the dead skin flake, but it can also mean something that's of value and like got a hierarchy in our society. And so what I think is really beautiful about this is that skin flake could be you during the best time of your life. It could be the person you loved. It could be the most important, fascinating human being you've ever met in your life. And we have this concept that we're this concrete structure that never changes, and we go through life, it gets a little older. But really, in reality, we are constantly creating new cells all the time. You're almost a brand new person every single year by the time your cells change over. And so what was once you and something you took pride in and loved then becomes a piece of dust that we put into a dustpan and throw away and think is disgusting. And what we realize is that these skin flakes, they're just made of the same stuff of everything else. And that's really what we are. We're just this little glimpse where we get to live for a little period of time and have this amazing experience, and then we just turn into dust again, which is kind of neat.
I think when we had initially looked at this, I was talking about the Argo ship the Argo ship example. That
Oh,
is
yeah.
kind of like an Argo ship, right? The Argo ship.
Yeah.
Something that had to be made and remade to such an extent that anything that was original in that ship is no longer there anymore, but it is still the same thing, right? Which is a becoming process. And this is a theme that I think is going through this entire exhibition, right? So anybody doing new materialism and feminist philosophy of science, right? That this is the new materialist philosophy is behind this, which is a becoming theory. And part of what I see happening here is, I mean, with the notion of the relic and, just, well, I don't know a whole lot about relics themselves, but what I see here is this, I mean, it is glowing, right? Like a set of metals of some kind, right? So it's like something you're gonna hang on the wall, as you're saying, then commemorate. But it's also like something that's fallen off a body, right? So we have like life and death, and this constant affectivity. We have this constant movement of all this stuff that is doing its own thing as us, right? So I like to think of myself as this fully unified, me, figure of me, but in fact, I am all these bits. I mean, that's kind of what it's signaling to me, right? Kind of like a memento mori, what we find in, like early Renaissance art, right? So it's performing that kind of function for me, like life will end, but also it's happening all the time to flakes of skin, not to like my whole self.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Constantly. We were talking about something earlier about a movie back in the day with a carousel where things are constantly moving through time. And that's really what's happening with our body. And what's interesting about this exhibit, when it was first made, it was put in a museum of natural history. And it was put in a prehistoric section next to some old birds and a bunch of other dinosaur fossils and everything else. And no one had a clue what it was. And we were like, this is fascinating. We love it. What is it? And it's like, it's dandruff. It's part of that nail clipping that you found and is disgusting, but it was also part of the nails that you had that you really loved that day when you were going out on the best day of your life. So, that's what I think is really interesting. And I think that, one of the things that we learned from the artist was that she created this to demonstrate the impermanence of life because her mother was passing away of cancer. And her father also had cancer at the same time, and she was spending a lot of time in hospitals. So she was seeing the impermanence of life and feeling it. And if you've ever lost a parent before, you know how that feeling is. And so this is almost a cathartic reference. And the reverence is that things that pass away still were once beautiful and things you loved.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's why I love this. You can tell I like this piece, even though it's a piece of dandruff, but I do really love it. Yeah.
Call it a flake.
Yeah, a flake, yes.
But we'll
Want to move on?
Yes, move on.
Okay. Oh, there it is.
Oh, here's the relic thing. Okay.
So there you go.
Somebody put this there wisely because I'm going to forget.
Good. My definition was much quicker than that. All right.
All right. This is another one. All right. Did you want to do it?
No, I'm going to let you go first on this one because we had very different perspectives on this.
We really do have very different perspectives. Okay, so this one, what I see with this one, first and foremost, is, first of all, I find it very Baroque in this exchange of light and shadow, and it's hanging up. So this is an immersive art piece, right? So when you go up and see it after this whole thing, right? So when you go up and see it, you have to walk under this and around it, and you're gonna get into the lights and into the shadows, and the whole thing's gonna change. And how you see it and what you see is also gonna change. So this immersiveness, this sort of neo-Baroque structure, I really love. But then I also love there's this interplay, and I suppose there's a lot of interplay that I see in all these things, but this one is between, for me, is just trauma. It's just like medical stuff is just trauma stuff. So there's like the gurneys, and then the sheets of the blood clots, I think. Yeah. So so those acetate sheets with the blood bits and all that. And it's all sort of hanging together as a mobile, which I love. I love mobiles.
That's cool.
So it's all hanging there like that. And, but it's, so these things sort of symbolize for me trauma in various ways, but it's the most, in this very comforting sort of space creation process, right? So as I walk around it, I'm sort of enveloped into its space, and it becomes not so scary. I'm like, I'm going to stand under it now, and it's not going to fall on me, right? Because it just feels cozy and fine, and the warmth of the reds and the oranges. I mean, I just find it that there's like this flipping going on, right, between trauma and cozy.
No, I
don't
love
see
it.
that.
Well, no, and I think this is a huge thing when it comes to, you know, you deal with these things in society where people are conditioned into certain ways of thinking. And for me, I came from a first responder background. I know there's some medical students here today that will probably feel a little bit the same way I do when they see this, because these are gurneys and these aren't hospital beds. These are what you take somebody on a stretcher and you put them into the back of an ambulance in an emergency. And when they're twisted together and moved together and you see a blood clot, you think acute trauma injury. For me, at least, that's what I saw first. And it took me a second, and I had to go a little bit deeper into this exhibit to see that it also represents positivity, because those gurneys save lives, blood clots stop bleeding, you know, and this was created at the height of the pandemic. And those gurneys were going to be torn apart for this exhibit and welded apart to create their own mobile.
Right.
But the fact was, they'd done so much good work in the world that Kim didn't want to destroy them. She wanted to keep them there so that they could ever be taken down, and they can be right now and be used as functioning gurneys at any point to save more lives. And so that's the other side of things that at first I just got used to my first responder hat. But when you start to look at it, you realize, okay, these are life-saving tools. This is, you know, blood clotting, which is going to stop a wound and allow somebody to heal. These can be continually used, and these are the most important part of somebody's treatment quite often. And so you look at that, it is really beautiful. And it's also the fact that we can overcome situations that are traumatic in life. And I think that's a really cool thing. You can wheel that whole mobile out and use it again in the hospital if you want to tomorrow, which is, I think, is really beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
So that's what I got out of it. But, you know, again, you're conditioned to whatever you're exposed to, you know? So
I'm gonna turn that around again, because with the other thing that coming at it again from this sort of new materialist philosophy, so this becoming theory that nothing is fixed, nothing is static, things are always in relational situations. So what I like about being in and around this immersive space that it creates is that, right? Is that the whole thing is changing what it does and how I'm interacting with it, but also there's an ethos, right? And there's an ethos to new materialism. And I'm not just making new materialism up here, because she also said that this is something that inspired her in creating the exhibition as a whole. Is this becoming philosophy, this new materialism thought? So the ethos of new materialism is kind of what you're saying, right? Is that we're making these relations relate, and we're opening up recognitions of, you know, ways of being, or what something initially looks like, and then what's actually going on. We're made to look, we're made to pay attention, right? We're made to attend, I think, to the world.
But also when you have dialogue around it and you have different perspectives coming together to see something, I can go up to that now and say, that is really beautiful, you know, but at first I was not thinking that, you know what I mean? And so you get caught up on different things. And I feel like that's the value in conversations like this, and having exhibits like this where people can see these things, the different views.
I
think that's a beautiful thing. What do you think?
All right, let's move on.
Oh yeah, okay. This is an interesting one. This is blood clot, and this is a chandelier. And this is an interesting situation, was that when this art exhibit was created, the artist was able to get a residency at Dalhousie in a hematology program, where she shadowed different hematologists and residents as they went around, and she started to use their technology to look at her own blood.
Right.
And then before long, though, she was able to reach out to artists and the doctors and patients and people she knew to be able to collect all sorts of different blood.
Right.
And so what she was able to do with this was create a collection of all the different samples of the people that had contributed to it as a form of light, which I think is really beautiful. And again, with this, if you look at labels, you can't tell who's blood. You can't tell what their race is. You can't tell what their background is. They're a mother, father, professor, mechanic, doesn't matter, right? And so I think that's a really, really beautiful piece for that. And that's really, that's a ton of work in that. When I look at that, I think about the amount of scientific rigor that it took to do the analysis and collect all those samples and all the people to convince and sign.
Right.
So I think when it comes to scientific sampling, that's quite impressive.
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, I go back to the neo-Baroque thing. And I also go back kind of like, so in my thinking about this, I put together the mobile ER with this, because they both sort of elicit the same sort of dual responses for me, right? That this one, I think, So the last one, the mobile ER, I thought was initially super traumatic, and then it's like kind of enveloping, right? Walking around it. And this one I think is like beautifully comfortable and very cozy looking. It looks really warm. I want to, you know, sit under it and read something. And then it's gross.
Yeah. Right.
And then it's like, oh, that's blood. That's a lot of it. And it's just like hanging there in little test tubes.
Well, okay, so that's like
maybe I won't sit under that and read a book.
but that's the community aspect of
Yes,
it.
it is communal.
And I think I was telling you the story. One time I was down south and I was walking through the most beautiful rainforest you've ever been in. And there was flowers everywhere and there was like stuff. And then I noticed there was like a papaya on the ground. And then I looked at the papaya and there was the biggest centipede I've ever seen in my life. And then I looked around and saw there was 5 zillion centipedes all around me and the entire mood changed. And that's kind of what that's like.
That's
You're
good.
like,
That's what's
yeah, it's
happening
kind of like,
here.
okay, that's a
But
little
again,
more-
it's doing that flipping, right? It's
Yeah.
doing that like it's not going to be fixed on any one sort of meaning or experience, right? That it's constantly vacillating in that way.
That's pretty neat. I love that one. Okay, it's your favorite.
I
Hit me.
really love this one. It's like a monster. And this is also a piece of skin. So you have to go see it. And what I love about this one is that it is that taking the micro and making a macro again. But for me, I just see this as animated. Like I want to give it a name. I love it. And so this is it's also, so we're getting into things that are more blown up now, right?
Yeah.
There are fans operating here, so it's a magnification of this piece of skin, so dandruff,
Sure.
and it lies there on the ground, and then with these fans in it, it moves, it breathes, right? And as you walk around it, it moves in different ways. So if you get too close to it, it's you know, like don't get too close to it, but but if you're closer or farther back, it's going to do different things. It's going to be, you know, the fans are going to move more or less. You're going to notice different parts of it are moving, right? They're flapping or waving or bending. It just looks like it's breathing. It looks like it's alive, and it's supposed to, I think, right? So this again is going back to this you know, death in life and all of that. The other thing I love about it is that you have to move around it, right?
Yeah,
So you now have to negotiate with something that before you just I brush off.
Yeah.
Like, be gone thing, right?
Yeah.
But now it's so big that I have to negotiate with this otherwise piece of abjection, right? This piece of disgustingness, and kind of befriend it. It's the monster under the bed, but it's also where am I going with this? It's also communal, I suppose. Is that what I want? That's what I want to get to,
You don't
right?
know
Because
whose dandruff that is?
yeah. Do we know whose dandruff that is? But it's communal in the sense that it's, again, so big that you have to think about it. You have to negotiate with it and recognize that this is all around us. Like there's, I hate to break it to you, but there's bits of skin all around. You know, we are participating in one another, right? So in the same way that I'm negotiating with Flake, right, to walk around it and watch it breathe and maybe give it a name, right? It's also reminding me that this is part of the world, right? Yeah.
Well,
I don't want to know who's
No, listen, I hear you. I was just going to say the same thing. It's like I've been sweeping the floor at home and I've been thinking about Flake here on the floor.
Yeah.
Everywhere you go. And we've probably been sweeping a little bit more than normal since I've seen this, because this might not be the right type of personality to think about all the little stuff that's hiding around your house. But I do think that, go back to the health literacy side of things. This is a flake, okay, of dead skin. And there's 4 stages of learning. And I think education is such an important way to be able to do this. And this is the fun thing when you see it, you do have to stand over it, you can see it. And it would be really engaging, especially for young people, to see this and be like, this is really cool. It's kind of gross. It's amazing. You know, but there's 4 stages of learning. There's unconscious incompetence. And a lot of people, when it comes to health, live in this state of unconscious incompetence. They have no idea they're doing anything wrong, right? And the most important stage of learning is called conscious incompetence. So then they're aware that they're doing it wrong,
I feel like
right? And so things like this can intrigue people to think about things they've never thought about before. And then once they start thinking about it, they're like, if I'm doing this wrong all the time, maybe I can learn to do it right. And that's called conscious competence, And that takes a lot of effort. That's riding a bike for the first time. You got to concentrate what you're doing it, and before long it becomes unconscious competence. That's the ultimate goal. And so I think when I see this is such a great way to be able to make it fun to learn about the body in such an engaging way. And I love that about that. So that was my education hat coming in on this. Yeah. You know, I got really
Very
deep on the
nice.
other one, but this one is
Yeah.
like just super fun. And I encourage you guys to check this
Oh,
out.
I love it.
There's another really fun one we have too, but it's after this one.
After this one, let's talk about this one a little bit.
Yeah, I love this one. Can I jump in this one?
Yeah.
Okay. So you guys go up to see this one. Unfortunately, you can't lift it up, but we had the pleasure to be able to, you know, touch these and feel them. And there's 2 different blood cells. So if you were to zoom in on your blood, there'd be tons of different cells in there. But the one that's white right there is a T cell. That's the type of white blood cell that's going to save your life or try and protect you as an immune cell if you have something like cancer. And the one on the left is heme or hemoglobin. Okay, so that's going to be iron in our blood, and that's the type of blood cell that's going to carry oxygen and give us life throughout our body. And what's really interesting about that heme is it's made of iron, and our body is made of iron, right? So we have heme, and hemoglobin is iron. And the weight of that is the equivalent to the weight of the 6 pints of blood that's in our body, okay? So it's really fascinating that if we were to blow up all these little cells in our body, they would actually weigh relatively that much because they're iron. And that's how our body's made up, of all these little tiny cells that all together equate to that much weight in our blood, which is incredible. And we're carrying that around, and it's heavy. Like, I mean, when you see it up there, it's like this big, and it's solid iron. So it's like lifting up a plate at the gym. So I think that's really fascinating. And yet, you know, they're different colors, and they're all in this red blood, you know what I mean? And they're all separated by all sorts of different stuff. And that's what I find really fascinating, is that you've got these 2 very different things that we consider the same, but they're completely different.
I don't have anything brilliant to say about this one.
No,
I really love it. I love how tactile it is, and I suppose the tactile part is what I love the most about it. So holding it, it is about 9.5 pounds. The red blood cell, the heme ring.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Heme,
So holding that one is, and it's warm, right? Starts off a little bit cool, but it picks up on your skin. So there's a warmth there. It's very tactile in that way, and you can watch it aging, right? Because it is going to
that's true.
change as it ages. The other one I think is the white blood cell, which my Miss Frizzle understanding of this is more.
It's rather self-deprecating.
Oh, it is here. Is that this isn't the white blood cell the thing that fights off stuff?
Yeah,
right? I know, and so like I don't see that happening. Like the red blood cell is the one that to me looks very. It means business. It's heavy. It's serious. It's kind of smooth, but not too smooth. It like interacts with your skin and warms it up. This is like a dog toy. It looks like a dog toy to me. So it's like prickly, but kind of fun, and it's silicone, and it's like, you know, it's kind of sticky and bouncy. I don't know. It looks like it's great fun. So all I can really see there is that contrast again, or that playful exchange, that interchange, right? That opening that up, so raising the scale of these again, makes us consider them, see them say in a new way, see them in new interactions with each other. I mean, like, whatever else is happening there, that very process, I think, is part of the meaning of the work.
I think you just hit the nail on the head for me, and that is the interaction with one another. Yeah, no, it's good. Because I mean, the other thing about the human body is that, you know, we're constantly studying it and trying to figure it out, and we have no idea how it works really. Like, I did my PhD in endocrinology, and when I got to a certain point of my answers, we're like, well, it just does it. We don't really know why. Yeah. Right. And it just does it. And so we're born with this incredible machine that operates itself without us thinking about it. Most of the time, we're not very good to it, and it still functions without a single thought or an owner's manual. And I think that's just incredible, because these things have this interplay. Another really cool thing when I saw this one that really triggered me is I get to travel to Bolivia this year. And I'm traveling to Bolivia, to La Paz, which is the highest city in the world, capital city in the world. And I'm meeting with a researcher there who's a high altitude physician. Okay. And he's taking me out in his 1955 Mercedes-Benz. And the reason he has a 1955 Mercedes-Benz is because things don't rust at high altitude. There's not enough oxygen. And so if you were to see the same thing at high altitude, he actually shows that there's lower rates of cancer and different things. And he's working with like NASA to help with space stations and stuff, because that's rusting, because there's oxygen, and sea level is very different than if you were in a place like that, it wouldn't be. And so when I think about how the body adapts to the environment, that also,
that's interesting.
That was kind of neat. So that came to me after I saw that. That was neat. Yes. But yeah, this is a fun one.
So this is the most fun you're ever going to have with belly button lint. So this is a giant ball, and it's based on belly button lint,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Her husband's belly button lint.
Her husband's belly button lint. but it's huge, right? So again, this flipping of scale is happening with this thing. So now you can play with it, right? You can bounce it around. I mean, you can't actually hear, I don't think, can you?
No,
Don't touch it.
yeah. We saw pictures of people doing it.
There's a video. There's a beautifully done video. It's just wonderful. And in the videos where she has images of that, right? Of people sort of testing it out. That she was testing it out by tossing it around outside in various places at the at Dell, I think.
Yeah, it was in front of like a really beautiful clock tower.
Yes, and then this ball of belly button lint is bouncing around with it, right? So I love that playful aspect of this. I love that. The flipping of scale again, but I think I've said too much about that, so I'm not going to talk about it more. Yeah. But what I also love about this is that it is participatory. It is, I'm going to go back to the new materialism again, right? Yeah. That this is something that is taking this tiny, overlooked, abject, kind of disgusting piece of the body that you're gonna like wash away, right? And look at it, attend to it, but attend to it in something we talked about a couple of images ago, right? Yeah. In this playful way. There's no stakes. You can just engage, right? Attend to parts of the body, and you can do this communally. So in the video that she has, right, people are playing with it together as if it's like a volleyball or something, right? Yeah, yeah. And that again is this part of this becoming process, that there is no one singular person. There's no unitary identity. Like things are all together, you know, doing many things, living and dying and shedding and staying, and doing that amongst many, right? It's a multitude always. It's this becoming process of, yeah.
No, I love that. I got that too. I think there's two things that stood out to me on this. Number one is when you know a little bit like science, like they took this art exhibit and everybody's like, that's an amazing art exhibit. It was done by Kim Morgan. Wow, it's amazing. And then they were throwing the ball up in front of the most distinguished building in a distinguished place. And like, I'm sure there was all sorts of people around like, wow, look at this. And they're like, it's my husband's belly button lint. And so science can let you be a little bit sneaky sometimes and have some fun. And I like that part of it. But that was really good. And then the other thing I think is really cool about it is it allows everything to just be what it is. Yeah. We have tons of times when we're in the lab at the medical school where we're dealing with all sorts of specimens. We were doing cadavers today and things like this. And it just becomes what it is. It's not gross. It just is. Yeah. It's belly button lint, or it's a piece of, you know, the human body, or it is what it is. And I think that that's a really cool perspective that we get from the medical school, where things stop to have this meaning of being gross or whatever. They just have to be something because somebody's going to come and present themselves with this situation, and you got to be able to deal with it. Right. And I think that's a kind of a fun thing about it. So I like that. It's sort of a great leveler that you can have fun with a piece of belly button lint instead of being disgusted.
I think the scale has something to do with that, right? Yeah. Like opening up, making it something that you can engage in and give it some attention.
Well, maybe there's a lesson there. Maybe things like around health, instead of being this scary, daunting, intimidating topic, can be fun and playful and approachable, and then more people would engage in it. You might end up with a whole different school of thought.
Art.
What? Yes.
Because they're both seen in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. No, I agree with that. Okay, this is the last one, and both of our favorites, I think. I don't know, my relic in this one's there.
It is. Do you want to say something?
I would like this. Yeah, I'll say this one. I think this is a cool story. I'll give maybe the background of this story. This is a beautiful exhibit. It's a gigantic sheet, and it's been hung up in different installations when this has been shown. It was originally created to be hung up in a window across from a blood donor clinic in the US. And it was a blood donor clinic where a lot of people went to donate their blood because they needed money, right? And so they went there to do this, and she created this beautiful curtain. And there's fans behind it, and the fans are timed to her breath. So it's really calm. But what's really interesting is those blood cells are all from different people, many of which would never be allowed to donate blood because of their sexual orientation or their health conditions or some other determinant, right? So I think that's also really beautiful. So that's what these people saw when they were donating blood. And from my side of things, what I see with this, and when I stand there and you're next to it, and the scale is big and it's calm, I see mindfulness and I see the body working in perfect order. Yeah. And I like that, because in order to have a regulated breath, you can't be in a fight or flight sympathetic nervous system state, okay? So you've got to be in a calm state. So when you control your breath, you can bring yourself to that state. So this might have been somebody who was stressed out 2 seconds prior, but when they controlled their breath, they were able to calm and bring their body back to homeostasis. And so for me, I found this a really relaxing. Even though it was very similar to the blood that was in the mobile ER, that to me was calming.
I find it kind of similar to the first one, to the blood galaxy, and to the mobile ER, and to the chandelier of grossness, right? And it all sort of comes together. For me, it all comes together in this one. So this one is just blows me away, right? And so I think my experience, again, it completely overlaps with yours, but I come to it from a different angle. So for me, so when you go to see this upstairs, it's enormous and takes up this entire room, and it's of course like the blood galaxy, many different people are involved in this, different cells, and you don't know who they are or what size or anything. Here, I don't even know what anything is. So I have that. I don't either. But I know it's blood.
I don't either. So we're good.
So, but anyway, so it's enormous. It's beautiful. The red is just gorgeous, and it's hanging in this beautiful way. It's this beautiful taffeta with the blood printed on it. And as I'm standing before it, it's because it's so big, it's just very sublime. It's kind of overwhelming. So for me, I got myself when we were walking around the gallery more and more worked up.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm just looking at it and thinking, like, there is no discussion here. There should be a discussion here about the politics of this, right? That we can talk about like AIDS and queerness. We can talk about the problems with, like, I don't know, all the problems with, say, politicians with trans youth, right? Blood is an issue there. Menstruation is an issue. There's so much like dirt attached to the meaning of blood, race and blood quantum and all of this stuff. And it's all presented in this giant curtain that you cannot get behind, and then it breathes better than my flake breathes. Then it breathes, right? And it breathes in this very calming way. Like, that's where our overlap is, I think.
No, I agree.
And for me, I don't know a whole lot about this. Somebody I love very much is very into Buddhism as a way of regulating themselves. So the breathing, the breath. So if anybody knows anything about that, you can talk about that at question time. But that the breathing part is what calms it all down. So all of this meaning and materiality and process was happening in my head, and then the whole thing starts to wave. And of course, the breathing is her breath, right? Yeah. It's timed with the fans behind the curtain to breathe Kim Morgan's breath. Yeah. Right. So and you have no choice. It's so big. It's right there. It's controlling you at this point that you breathe with it, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful experience.
And that's why breathing is used for meditation, is that breathing is autonomic. We don't have to think about breathing. Right. But when you think about breathing, all of a sudden you can't get enough breath. Yeah. You know, and then you get time to sit there and you turn it from autopilot into this manual control. And that nice thing about this is that you don't have to focus on breathing yourself. When you go and stand next to this, it all of a sudden makes you conscious of your breath, which makes you more conscious of the exhibit, which is a beautiful trick to make people watch it, right? So I think that's great. Yeah. Do we have one more? Oh, we don't have one more.
We have Eve Klein Blue. No.
I would encourage everybody to take a look at the video upstairs and watch it to its full thing. Because
watch the video. It's what, 10 minutes? Maybe? About 10 minutes?
And I would just make one comment on what you were saying, is that it starts off with different labels as it goes through this 9 cycles. Okay, so it might start off with a blood cell.
Yep.
And the next time it shows a blood cell, it's somebody's name, and then their occupation, and then the disease they might have passed from, or their sexual orientation. But it's still just a blood cell.
It's just a blood cell.
And it's how we label things. And what I found was really interesting about that is I got an appreciation for your field and the fact that, you know, these are arbitrary names sometimes. And I look at it from my side and I can say it's a blood cell. The other stuff is sort of arbitrary when it comes to how we name it, you know? Right? So I think that's a really interesting piece for that side of things. Yeah. Yeah. And then the heartbeat.
And the heartbeat just like carries you through, kind of like the breath. Anyway, watch the video. It's really, really good.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
I think that's it for us.
I think, it's good. I have no idea how long we were, so thank you.
That was great.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks so much to Dr. Mike Wahl and Dr. Jennifer Dyer. So we're now going to open it up for question period from the audience. We'll just take 3